Hello, I am so excited to welcome you to this video. Today I'm going to be introducing you to Dr. William Gradishar. Dr. Gradishar is a breast oncologist who will be creating Yerbba videos that address questions that you have about treatment, prevention, how to cope with breast cancer and its side effects, as well as content for the people in your life who love you. Dr. Gradishar, welcome to Yerbba.
Well, thanks so much for the invitation to participate in this and hopefully do something that approximates the big shoes I have to fill.
Oh, well, I have no doubt that you will. Tell us a little bit about you. Where did you grow up? What's your background?
So my story, I guess if you think about people in academics, there are two extremes. People who move every couple of years to do something else and go somewhere else. And then there's the other extreme where people never move. And I fall into the latter group. So I've been in Chicago my entire life, although I go to the airport a lot. But that aside, I grew up here. I did my training here. I moved from one institution to the other. I even went to undergrad at Northwestern, then University of Illinois, then University of Chicago for fellowship. In between, Michael Reese Hospital for residency, and I've been at Northwestern for the last 35, 36 years on the faculty.
So what color do you bleed?
Well, purple, although, I went to college in Northwestern during the years when they literally never won a football game. So you sort of got, you went to the football games if you went to see how bad they were going to lose. So it was sort of a demoralizing period in the history of athletics at Northwestern. But I still think purple is the color that I generally think of at this point.
All right. Tell us when you were a kid, what did you do for fun?
When I was a kid, what did I do for fun? Well, I played sports like any other, kid growing up, baseball and, stuff. I had two brothers, so we in between fighting and, we got along and we did things like all brothers did. So I mean, it was just a typical suburban growing up kind of environment. And, again, we got to know Chicago even at a young age, so we were pretty independent back then. Nowadays you wouldn't stray out of your backyard, but we rode. I think of what we did as kids, just as an aside. Now that we're talking about it, I wouldn't dare have had my own child do, riding your bike to another town or going. Nobody does that anymore. So it was a different time, but, it was sort of the wholesome Midwest growing up experience.
Well, thank you. And you have two dogs, I think.
I have two dogs, two German Shepherds. We've always had German Shepherds because we like to have as much hair scattered about the house as possible. And we can write testimonials for Dyson vacuum cleaners because they are amazing. You vacuum even though it looks completely clean, and then you empty the thing 5 minutes later and there's this massive clump of hair. So anyway, that's we've always had German Shepherds, and we have two right now. And I see you have yours in the background.
I do. Yeah, I have a little terrier mix who sometimes enters the Yerba videos. If not visibly, audibly, she'll show up.
Well, that tradition will continue, I can be assured, because they never seem to be able to stay out of things once I settle down to do something serious.
Yeah, they're interested in showbiz, it sounds
Yeah.
like. Yeah. So I'm curious what drew you into oncology and breast oncology in particular. Is there a turning point or story or a patient that you can think of who said to you, this is it, this is what I want to do?
Well, I think back to it wasn't really in medical school so much, but rather residency. And I was at Michael Reese, which was a hospital that had some renown back in the day, and the change and turmoil and everything. That hospital eventually disappeared. It was largely back in the day a hospital that catered to a sort of strange mix. It was all Jewish folks or all African Americans. And then as sort of white flight hit, people sort of went north that would have been typically going to Michael Reese Hospital. And, the financial situation led to its disappearance many couple decades ago. But anyway, the reason I bring that up is because the faculty that were there at the time included the premier oncology group in Chicago. And, again, when both of us started, oncology was a relatively new subspecialty. And even if you went to some of the big universities, there were only a couple of people that sort of did oncology. And at Michael Reese, at the time, there was the biggest private practice group that focused in that area, heme malignancies and solid tumors. And I came to appreciate that these guys were among the smartest, seemingly to me as a trainee, and empathetic physicians that I'd ever met. And I thought that modeling something like that would not only be a good thing to do, but also, they were doing bone marrow transplants and things like that. This was, pretty exotic back then. And, that stimulated my interest in it and it never waned. So I continued to focus on that as I went forward.
The things I'm hearing that drew you to oncology were the oncologists that you knew, the environment and a culture in oncology that focuses on empathy as well as progress, bone marrow transplants, cutting edge technology. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think that we certainly appreciate that in the era we work in now, where things seem to be changing every 15 minutes. But even back then, 3+ decades ago, the field of oncology was still sort of viewed as cutting edge, doing things that, was really pushing the envelope in terms of caring for patients. High dose chemotherapy and bone marrow transplantation was what got, a lot of the press back then. But there was the development and the beginning of new drugs in a variety of different areas. And we started to see the real impact of these advances in how patients did. But equally important, I think that to be in this field, regardless of the area or subspecialty within oncology, to be an effective physician, you have to have qualities above and beyond just knowing all the data or the best therapy. You have to know how to interact with people and patients and know that not everybody is going to be cured, and you have to guide them along that journey that they're on, and hopefully do it not only with professionalism, but with empathy and compassion, because not everybody ends up with the best outcome, and you have to help them get through that travails of therapy and, sometimes a downward trajectory that they might have. And you're also caring for their families as well, who are on the journey with them.
It's such an honor to be a companion to our patients and those who love them, no matter what happens with the disease. I find that as long as I focus on the patient and their experience, that there's always some form of hope. What we hope for might change.
I think that's right. And I think that, always trying to find out what's important to a patient, because, they come to you in a time and with a diagnosis that's oftentimes frightening and devastating, because they know the implications of it. And at the same time, you don't want them, nor do they, want to stop living. And you have to try to make the quality of their life as they go through that journey as good as it can be. I mean, that's always one of the things we talk about, advances, but we always have to balance that, of course, with what is the patient experiencing as they undergo these therapies, and hoping that the net effect is that they have good quality of life, because that always has to be a priority as well.
Thank you. What's exciting you about working with Yerbba?
Well, I think, we interact with patients on a daily basis, and I think sometimes the questions and the issues that patients are thinking about or that they pose to us are not isolated. They apply to a much broader population, meaning, we have a bigger reach when we do things like this, where patients have an opportunity, even if they're not under your care, to get information, to get perspectives that they may not have received wherever they're receiving their care. So I think that part of it is just an extension of what we often do as educators, but also as physicians. And that's on a day-to-day basis. But with Yerbba, at least as I hope and I think you've conveyed to me, we have the potential to expand that reach significantly and hopefully impact on many more patients and their families than we might otherwise have had an opportunity to do.
I love that you want to amplify the work you do every day in the office, in your research, to an audience of people who can access Yerbba videos no matter where they are, no matter what part of the world they're in, no matter where they get their care. They have access to high quality information that helps identify what's important to them, and we try to do that in Yerbba. I am so excited that you're taking on this role. For people who are curious about what this means, I'm 100% confident that the quality of the information you'll be getting will continue to be high quality, up to date. Dr. Gradishar is involved in clinical trials research. He's nationally and internationally renowned for his work in advancing cancer care. I can still be found at my website, jennifergriggs.com. And you can always check out my podcast, The Dignity Lab, which you can get anywhere where you get your podcasts. Dr. Gradishar, I just want to thank you for taking on this work and for becoming part of the Yerbba community. And as always, I want to thank you, our viewers, for being part of the Yerbba community.
Well, thanks so much. And as I said at the outset, it's sort of a privilege to follow you in this role, and I hope I live up to the expectations you've set.
I am 100% confident that you will. Thank you so much.
Thanks.